Welcome back, and we rejoin the race with the women on the main climb of lap 2.
Tackling the main ascent for the second time, and Alexander's now passing some of the tail end men, and she'll be trying to extend her lead up here. This is her favourite terrain. For a change, her challengers are not completely out of contention, as both Morell and Roberts regain time on the dusty single track descent at the far side of the course, but neither look like they can maintain Alexander's climbing tempo. Out of Maddox Coppice, it's Alexander's fiancée Clarke who's still top man and looks very comfortable, with around 60 seconds in hand over the young Saracen rider Gunnar.
Go on.
And now that chasing trio are only a further 20 seconds behind, so Gunnar's second place is under real pressure. They're benefiting from sharing the workload at the front, with Craig moving aside for Baker to take it on. The heat and the demands of the course are really spreading the field out, and Ford and Early both are on their own, and once you're out of sight on this course, you're out of mind. And since Clay has pulled out after a heavy crash on the descent, the next rider through is Cuthbertson. So here are the positions near the end of lap 2, as Cuthbertson checks his advantage over Paul Lacenby, currently 9th.
Running commentary, there's a big crash at the start, and I got a bad one.
Well, he's obviously moving up well, though Alistair Martin's only 17 seconds behind him. The women are now on their way down, and you can see how much dust is being kicked up as Alexander follows one of the back markers. This kind of single track suits Morell to a T, and she's limiting the damage to around a minute, with the Welshwoman a further minute behind and finding a dust-free line.
2 minutes behind Caroline.
While Windos, who lies 4th, is another one enjoying these descents. As Alexander heads out of the coppice, a group of men are now trying to get a toe on her wheel. She hasn't been able to take a breather, for Morell has chipped away at her lead on every descent. And unlike the past 2 years, the Saracen rider is showing no sign of weakening on this course. It's good to see this trio of top place regulars on form and in close contention. And despite the sound of her breathing, Roberts is going well, but she does suffer from asthma, so the dust today will be affecting her. Here's the situation confirmed as Windos comes through. She's one of a number of riders making a mark in her first season at this level. Robinson's another, but she's a further minute back today. The men are now on their third lap of 5, and through the main arena, Clarke is increasing his lead. Gunnar has had to retire after a double puncture, while Craig and Baker have managed to drop Gould, who was struggling to stay with them. Clarke's lead has grown to nearly 2 minutes, and his decision to miss the Hill Climb Championships for the first time to preserve his energy seems to be paying off. Just like Margam a fortnight ago, Baker and Craig are again working together in an attempt to bring back the leader. On that occasion it was Gould who was away, but today he's lacking firepower for an attack, though his 4th position is now more clear-cut as Ford has also retired. On their penultimate lap, and there's no change in the women's positions. Alexander's lead over Morell is gradually increasing, but allows her little margin for error, and Roberts, who's renowned for her strong finishing, has remained in contention. The most difficult descent on the course is at the bottom of Maddox Coppice, and it has deteriorated with a number of riders through today. So, with tailenders ahead of her, Alexander is taking no chances and elects to run the trickiest section before remounting. Morell, though, is riding all the way despite the dust masking her line, and that's kept the gap pegged at around a minute. Clarke is also at ease on the descents, and his lead is such that he needn't take any chances at all. Windoss is still fourth behind Roberts, but she'll soon be passed by the chasing men's tandem of Baker and Craig, who, with little more than a lap to go, must realise they are destined for silver and bronze, but in which order? Fifth place Robinson has closed the gap on Windoss slightly, but she's having all sorts of problems with this descent. And even Gould took a tumble here last time round when he tried to lap a rider. While Early, who's not renowned for his downhilling, will be very conscious of the collarbone he broke earlier in the season. The leaders are now cresting Sachs Hump for the final time, and Clarke is the first over. Barring mishaps, which the rally rider this season has had his fair share of, Clarke should be adding this title to the National Cyclo-Cross crown that he won in the winter. In the woods, regular top 10 finisher over the season, Cuthbertson is still in 6th, but Martin has now moved up to 7th. Alexander is next over the hump, and I'm sure she'll have been delighted that it was her fiancé Barrie who lapped her at the start of the final loop, particularly since the chasing two men have not yet caught her. In fact, Craig is now on his own, second, after Baker's hopes of a 4th title in a row were thwarted when he wrecked his wheel on a log and had to retire. So Gould will no doubt be considering himself fortunate to have moved into the bronze position. Down the single track of Maddox Coppice for the last time, and Clarke is nearing the end of a long, lonely ride, which has already seen him out on his own for 4 laps. And there's little chance of Craig changing that now with only a mile and a half to go. And another trophy seems assured for the Alexander Clarke cabinet, as the Klein rider is now well clear and heading for her 4th British Championship in a row. Since Clarke disappeared into the distance on lap 1, Craig has really only been contesting silver, which he also won here last year. But having taken the National Series a fortnight ago, this has been the Diamondback rider's most successful season to date. While Alexander should be rightly pleased with this title, particularly as it follows a very disappointing summer on the World Cup circuit. So Clarke is all smiles as he crosses the line to take the British title, and becomes only the 3rd rider to do so, along with Baker and Gould. The Schwinn rider is now heading in for bronze to add to the gold and silver medals he's won in the past. Craig crosses the line 2nd for the 4th time in a row in a national cross-country race, and this time it's for silver in the Nationals. Meanwhile, Morell is heading out of the Coppice for the final time, and she's now overcome her jinx course with style, keeping the gap to Alexander within 2 minutes. The next 2 through are Early, who'll take 4th in the men's competition, and Roberts, who's once again firing on all cylinders and seems to have refound her motivation. Yet again, Alexander has no peers, but that smile is for her fiancé Barrie Clarke, and I think she's more happy for him than herself. And the applause is just as loud for the next 3 over the line, as Gould takes the bronze for the men, while for the women, Morell takes silver, and Roberts comes in for the bronze. The crowd are appreciative of the excellent racing they've witnessed, and on such a hot day. But spare a thought for Ian Taylor, who broke his chain with a mile to go and had to run in to claim 8th spot.
So Alexander takes her 4th national championships in a row, but for a change, Morell and Roberts almost had her in sight. While Clarke takes his 1st national cross-country title in commanding style ahead of Craig and Gould. After the medalists had taken their plaudits from the crowds, we asked them about their races.
I've never quite got it right on the day on the mountain bikes, and this year I won the cross title from being a bit of an outsider, and I followed a similar sort of peaking plan for this week, and it's paid off. With a lap to go, I'd opened up a gap on Nick. It probably had grown to more than 2 minutes, I think, so I knew I was okay and I was still feeling quite strong, so there wasn't any problems, which is a rare treat to get it right on the day, especially at championships.
I'm really pleased with 2nd. I'd like to have won it, obviously, but Barrie really today was in his own class. He went away from the start, took a minute and 20 seconds out of it straight away, and me and David were going through and off, and we couldn't close on him. He was holding it for quite a long time. I'm surprised that I could come back and race right at the top. I'd have never expected. If you'd have told me this was how it was going to go in May, I would never have believed you.
I was having a day really where I was struggling, and I just had to ride at my own pace, so it wasn't really enjoyable at all, but sort of it was like a war of attrition, and a couple of guys that were ahead of me packed with trouble. Alan Gunn, who had a puncture, and David broke some spokes, so I ended up 2 places higher than perhaps my fitness would have allowed.
The plan was to go from the gun, and unfortunately we were into the expert riders very quickly, and it made it difficult on the descents because it was so dusty, and I must admit I crashed a lot, but I'm sure it was the same for Deb, and all credit to her, she rode a great race, and I'm pleased to have won.
It just kept yo-yoing between like about 45 seconds and a minute 15. I think in the end they ended up at a minute 45. She pulled away a bit on the last lap, but I think probably she was gapping me a bit on the climbs, and I'm pulling her back on the descents because I was descending really well.
I had a really good start to the season, and the middle of the season, as you say, has been terrible. I just sort of haven't been getting it together at all. I've been struggling a bit physically as well, sort of just, and mentally. It's a bit of everything really, so I was really pleased with today. Yeah, it was great.